I18. I'm Michael Magid, live from Palm Desert, California. I know I'm doing the little mini vacay, Omar, going on.
That's right.
With me, as you know him as the czar of the virtual background, the one and only Omar Zeenni, the Norse god himself of thunder, with his horns sticking out of his head, dude. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I did not know that logo. I did not know that lovely motif that you've got behind you, but it looks very powerful. I'm not gonna lie, very superhero-like.
It is great, and I will tell you this. I mean, for some people who may or may not know, 2016, when I went to the Euros, saw a few games. I was mainly in France, and when Iceland was on their little run, I think it was it's just like the Vikings and kind of like the slow clap to the big clap, and then I think Atlanta United may have stolen it from them. I'm pretty sure they did, but it's just like it became so big, and at that moment in time, we were just like, damn, okay, like these fans really know how to get down. And when they beat England, that was just another like cementing factor. We're just like, okay, these guys aren't just like here to celebrate and have fun. They're actually good. So, and I say that all because we got Ben here, and Mike, you can introduce him. I don't want to take your thunder here, but go for it.
Well, I was just going to lead right into that, guys. The reason he's got that fantastic background is because obviously he's done a little bit of stuff since then as well too. But we got Ben Dragavon, head of Dragavon Performance. Guys, honestly, this is a treat for me personally. I'm somebody that's really big into sports performance. As somebody that was not athletic as a kid in any way whatsoever, and I had literally when I got to college, they're like, "Oh, you don't know how to run," which says a lot about my abilities right there. But Ben, honestly, thanks for doing this, man. We're really excited about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure. I was looking at your previous podcast, and I was like, gosh, look at this lineup these guys have. They're pulling people from everywhere. Not bad at all.
We're trying to do what we can. I mean, we're very fortunate that we have one of the biggest social media educators in the world on the podcast with us, and then obviously a World Cup winner, which I would introduce right now if she could hear us right now.
Who can't figure out her microphone? Did you hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you now. We can hear you now. That voice you're hearing right now, guys, you know her, 99 World Cup winner, Saskia Weber. Oh yeah. Much better.
I mean, worst comes to worst, Oscar, your mic stops working, we just cut you out of the podcast. And I mean, it's just like, it's not a big deal.
I try to do that to you all the time, Omar, but it doesn't work.
I know. It's okay. It's okay. We'll figure something out.
Oh my gosh, man. Now, before we kind of get into the fun and games and everything, guys, and this really awesome topic of movement efficiency, we actually had something happen recently that's pretty close to our heart and Ben's heart as well too. Recent guest of the show, fan of the show, Brittany Wilson of the Orlando Pride, goalkeeper, recently had a passing in her family, and she's in a little bit of a difficult position right now. And for those of you guys who don't know, there's a GoFundMe out there to help out for some of the costs, posthumous costs that are going on right now after the passing of her mother. And Ben, I know that you've worked with Brittany, so I don't know if you wanted to say a few words in regards to this GoFundMe.
Yeah, no, I had the opportunity to work with Brittany at a national team camp. I think it was a U19 camp. Great person, great worker, student of the game. Moments like these, soccer is a game. So we're well beyond that in situations like this. So, thoughts and prayers go out to her and her family, and, anything we can do to help, let's get on board with it, especially this time in our world's history. So let's get on it.
Exactly. And then if you guys don't have the link, it's in our social media. It's on the Facebook page. It's on the Twitter page. I would put it up on the Instagram page, but we don't have that 10K to do the direct link. But some people out there might be able to do that. So maybe they can help us out with that. But obviously, guys, it's a tough situation, and I want to focus on the positives right here. And I think just the fact, honestly, Ben, that the fact that something like this happened and you happen to be on the podcast now just shows how close and how small the goalkeeping community is.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
With that, there's been absolutely fantastic support coming from not just the league, but people in the goalkeeping community helping out, sending money in the GoFundMe, guys. So please keep spreading that love. Keep sharing everything, guys. And obviously the Wilsons are in our prayers, today. But yeah, I mean, that's a tough place to segue from. But I felt it was sometimes important. I know, it's a little bit difficult. Anyway, moving on, Ben, for some people who might not be familiar with you and your work, why don't you kind of break down kind of what you've been doing since you kind of left the professional goalkeeping game and kind of moved into sports performance?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey because essentially my career was cut short by injury. So after I was done with the Sounders, I was there from 2006 to 2010. I bounced around MLS, sort of. I was that bizarre MLS pool keeper position, so I got exposure to several different clubs, which is, how I ended up in Columbus with Columbus Crew and with Toronto FC, and ultimately landed in Austin, which is now Orlando City. And kind of going down there, I already had some injury issues leading into it, and it just kind of got exasperated when I went down there. Long story short, I lost my contract there, a couple back situations there that I couldn't dig out of, and landed back at the facility that I work at today. I actually went there as a injured athlete seeking out help because I wasn't finding the results I needed from traditional therapeutic methods. I wasn't getting back to where I wanted to be. So I found this facility called the Athletic Training Institute, and their methodologies and philosophies really resonated with some of my issues, and it changes the paradigm of how I was thinking and approaching my own injuries. So at that point, I was kind of waffling about trying to play again. Wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do. Kind of the post-playing struggle that a lot of athletes go through, and the identity issues, like, if I don't do soccer, well, what am I going to do? And then I had a degree in pre-physical therapy from Western Washington before I started playing. So some of the information they started giving me resonated and made sense. And I just ultimately found myself staying there and studying and trying to work out and figure out what that meant again, while simultaneously transitioning into a coaching career. So had an opportunity to coach for the Sounder U23s. That transitioned into me coaching with the Sounders Academy for 4 years, which transitioned into me coaching with the Seattle Reign women's team, the first team, for another 4 years, which landed opportunities with the U.S. national team on the women's side, which ultimately led me to what I do now with all sorts of athletes and everyday people on a daily basis as it's become my full-time kind of situation.
I absolutely love this. And, Saskia, I know, this is something that you've talked to a lot of athletes about in regards to, when something may happen, maybe it's an injury, maybe it's a loss of a contract or something like that, that there are so many other ways to stay involved with the game. And just, Ben, you finding that type of path. I know, Saskia, I know for yourself, it was one of those things where you've seen it firsthand, and obviously with yourself too, where you're kind of like, okay, how do I stay involved with the game, and where am I going to best serve it?
Yeah, I think. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah. No. Yeah. I think that Ben, what's amazing is I actually walked away from the game for a very long time because there was no outlet and there was no place to identify with somebody that, whether it was my back and it ended my career, or, and then once you end, exactly what you said, like, what do I do? Who am I? Especially at playing such a high level, the emotional tolls that, and like you and other athletes can identify with that. I think it's amazing.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. And I have teammates
because I didn't have that. I did not have that,
Yeah.
And you look at like the Michael Phelps that are
you may need to call
base
in
on that. Like it's so imperative.
Yeah,
it's so
Saskia,
it's all messed up. It's up.
Yeah. You're just gonna have to turn it off and maybe
back. I'm rapping.
Just call. Yeah, call in.
All right, but
yeah, it felt like I was at Coachella there.
I know. There was a lot of DJing going on. Well, you know what? It's still better than what was going on with Dan Gaspar about a week ago. Or was it a couple weeks ago, Omar, when we had Dan on, and in his basement, he literally.
It was the whole thing. It was just. It was rough. It was rough.
Yeah.
and then we had that beeping sound going on and everything like that, which is the reason why, we need performance coaches, guys, to teach us how to do all sorts of different things, from using Zooms to becoming better athletes and everything like that. So we can kind of swing over into that topic right now, guys. Today's topic is movement efficiency. Like I said, Ben, in regards to myself, it wasn't until I got to college where I really started getting into it, because I didn't realize how limiting my abilities were, not because of a lack of desire or of lack of understanding of the position, but just in regards to my mechanics. Nobody had actually taken the time to break down my mechanics. And, in your kind of own words, like, what do you think of when you think movement efficiency?
Yeah, that's a broad question. Initially, you look at it and go, okay, how do I get from point A to point B, in the most efficient way possible, conserving the most energy? How do I get from point A to point B, so I can do task C as efficiently as possible, right? Because, you can look at a lot of situations in goalkeeping, especially if, in a training setting, okay, how your first movement takes you from wherever you're starting. So you're starting outside the goal and gets you to in line with a shot or whatever. A to B is going to dictate if you have to repair some sort of movement inefficiency, or if you're there and you're set in time and et cetera. Movement efficiency for me now has evolved into different kind of, you can call them brackets, I don't care, whatever the terminology should be, but it can be your mechanical movements now. It can be your emotional movements now. What you're thinking about can make your movement efficient or inefficient. Your emotion with the task at hand is incredible. If you have some sort of emotional trauma that makes your brain think about what you're trying to do, you can become inefficient. So there's a lot of spectrums to movement efficiency that I throw into how I practice and utilize that term. The thing that I like to use, or the thing that I try to really, really explore with call to client, is where are you inefficient? And it doesn't just have to be, okay, we're out doing something on the field and we're looking at you from point A to point B. That doesn't look right. I want to get into the bottom of what is really going on that is, and what are the factors that are contributing to all these inefficiencies that you may be having.
Yeah. It's so great that you said that, because, as we're getting Saskia back right here, I think one of the biggest issues a lot of times, especially at the youth level, Saskia, is that a lot of times coaches just go, oh, he can't move. He can't move. She can't move. They're slow. They can't jump, that sort of thing, as opposed to looking at, okay, how do we break it down? Maybe it's something that can be fixed if we just change the way they move,
No, absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. No, absolutely. And you have to get into the dynamics of each individual goalkeeper, period. Everybody moves differently. Everybody's body type is different. Everybody's athleticism is different. And, it's not cookie cutter. It's not like, this is how you're supposed to move. This is how you're supposed to do it. Everybody should do it the same. Some people have strengths and weaknesses, and we have to find them. We have to highlight them, and we have to work on the weaknesses, and find it's a means to an end. So what's the end game in it? What is the result that you're trying to get in the movement and in everything? And how do I take this specific person with their deficiencies and with their strengths and make them get there?
No, absolutely. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you're spot on. And now we take a step further and go, what individual are we talking about? Because, youth sports this day and age, and it's not unique to soccer, there's a problem with what's going on, in my opinion. And the amount that they're training and the early on specialization may be really doing a disservice to overall athletic development and emotional development and psychological development, because kids in the culture of youth soccer, especially at a higher level at DA, ECNL, they're training 4 or 5 nights a week and having 1 or 2 games on the weekends. When are they recovering from these activities? And especially as a goalkeeper, Now you're supposed to go to your club's training, and if you're not fortunate to have a club goalkeeper coach, now you have to go out and seek out someone for personal training. And
Yeah.
what do these kids have to give from a nervous system output standpoint? That was one of the tricky parts I ran into when creating my goalkeeping program, was how do I add more into an environment that already has way too much in it? How do I progress people safely and efficiently without causing potential harm? What do they have to give? So, a lot of youth athletes, along with a lot of just everyday people, are running kind of in a system of something that's called allostasis. Are you familiar with that term at all?
No.
Yes.
Oh, Saskia is.
Well,
Sorry.
allostasis would be deviations away from homeostasis. So homeostasis is where you should kind of live, where you should be normal, right? You're in harmony with the environment, blah, blah, all the good stuff that we want. You start adding in all these different stressors. And for youth kids, that's going to be school. That's going to be all the practices they have to do. That's the double practices. Now that's the speed and agility session. That's their parents. That's all their phones. That's all that stuff. And they start living deviations away from what normal should be. And then they get used to it. And so it's an extreme example would be a functioning alcoholic, where they wake up and they're like, I'm a little hungover today, but it's normal. Kids are living in these deviations. So they're functioning at a lower output than they probably should be if they're allowed proper recovery, different socialization, and everything that should go into it. And, you kind of take a step back and think, how well could they do if they actually train maybe a little bit less? How good of sessions would the coach have if he or she were coaching one day less a week and they spent more time preparing for it, or did something different that was a different stimulus for those kids, and it allowed their brains to recover and it allowed their bodies to recover? Because over time, the more you keep adding more and more and more, the brain communication to that muscle tissue goes down, not up. Yeah. Especially if you're not allowing it to recover. And then you're talking about compensation patterns. And now we go into a bigger topic of, okay, movement efficiency. How well is the brain even communicating to the tissues we need to move into those positions? And that's the big question. How well is their brain communicating? Are they tired? Are they fatigued? Are they ready to go? And that's how I've incorporated. Oh, there's a good dog. That's how I've incorporated what I've incorporated in my goalkeeping program, and now actually every program that I have, because I work with Major League Baseball and NFL players and whatever else, is, are you ready to go today? And if not, we need to make sure your brain is communicating these tissues first. Otherwise, the cueing I give you, and they could be the best cues in the world, your brain's going to interpret them the wrong way potentially. And is that going to help your technique, or is that going to help our goal? Maybe not. So there's a lot that goes into it, which gives a lot of opportunity to grow as well.
And it's a really big thing that we're about at UCLA. And this isn't like a pitch or anything like that, but it's not go, go, go. It's loading, understanding when to recover, timing for the next game, whether it's 2 days off, whether it's this, making sure, rehab, everything. And it's a full team effort. And, you see, and I agree with you, you see these kids in club and, it's go, go, go. And then they think that then they're with their private trainers on the side. And so when is the recovery? When is the mental recovery? It's just as important.
Omar, I want to ask you, Omar, real quick, because the thing is obviously is that you started doing private training and group training after the quarantine, and you were working with the same players that you're working with prior to, these youth kids in the Zoom environment, and now post the Zoom environment. Have you noticed, for a lack of a better term, you having to reprogram, the way they move, the way they think, any sort of, patterns like that?
No, not necessarily. I think, since we've played, and I think we've, have long vacations or off seasons where we come back and we realize, those 2, 3, 4 trainings we need to get back to our full hand-eye coordination, back up to speed. So I gave the kids like that buffer zone of like, look, we're probably going to train twice a week for the next whatever to make up some time. But in these first few sessions, I don't want you to get upset. I don't want you to get frustrated because the hand-eye coordination, your timing is going to be off. Just have the understanding that you are making your way back, and then look for the little technical details that when you are 100%, at least you focus on something that was in your control. So that's what I try to make sure they understand. But I just wanted to follow up with Ben and kind of touch on something that Dan Abraham said to us, Mike, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5 months ago. And he was saying that a lot of times coaches, and he's like, sometimes, you know, with respect to the arrogance of some coaches, is that we think that every mistake in a game, everything comes from a technical error and it can be fixed. And Ben, you said something earlier about sometimes there's like a traumatizing experience, or there's something that is hindering them from applying the proper technical efficiency that you're trying to implement into them. And what Dan was saying is that a lot of times there are experiences, psychological, or that voice in there from their coach is like, you have to catch everything. And in those situations, they're trying to catch a cross that should be a punch, or they're trying to catch a shot that should be a deflection or a parry into a, you know, a safe area. So Ben, for you, is there like, are those like questions that you may ask before, or, you know, while you're trying to teach them certain movement efficiency of like, hey, like, why is it that we're not able to find this? I need you to understand, or help me understand, where do you think this inefficient movement came from?
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually falls into my extensive intake protocol where, you know, so to kind of give a little background on that, you know, I do rehabilitation methodology. So I actually have a massage table and people come and I put my hands on them, do biomechanical analysis and all sorts of stuff before I even get them moving. And we can talk about that if we're interested, but yeah, I definitely touch on that through that intake process and ask very specific questions and kind of read off their feedback and kind of guide conversations and ask specific ways to kind of identify if there are emotional traumas in there, because emotional trauma will manifest itself into some sort of physical sensation, whether that be tightness or some sort of anxiety response, you know. And then on the field, that trigger could pop right back up and their arousal level could go way too high, or their arousal level could stay too low. And then maybe they're thinking now and they're responding off of the ego, thinking a little bit too much about something, or they're forecasting and they don't get the most out of that situation. They're not thinking, they're not feeling it. They're trying to analyze it, and the nervous system and the brain are slow moving processes relative to the speeds that we need to do stuff on the field. So if they're thinking about it, it's not going to work out the way we want it to, you know. And there is absolutely historical context to it. So if they had a bad experience and the coach gave this kind of response, maybe that's what they remember. And the fear of that response happening again may be enough to freeze them up or traumatize them in a certain way that, they make an interesting decision when you're like, why did they do that? Yeah. And you've all seen the kid who goes, oh gosh, why'd they do that? Why'd they punch that ball? And then you don't know what they've historically had happen to them that made them just go, oh gosh, what do I do? And then just, that's it. Default. Yeah, for sure. And that was their safety mechanism, and that's what they did. And, you know, you can overanalyze that to what you, as far as you want to, but there's a lot of factors that go into these things, and coaches need to be aware of that and be open-minded that it's not bigger, stronger, faster. It's not all the metrics that you do at the NFL Combine. There's so much more that goes into this stuff, especially the way our world is evolving, that you really have to take into consideration and need to take into consideration, because the mental health side of it and the psychological side of it is just no question going to contribute to the physical output side of things.
I mean, dude, what you're saying right now, first off, by the way, I'm just sitting here and I'm just like, Ben, can you just stay on here all afternoon? Can I just take a course? Is that cool? Can we just do a course today? But just that whole neuromuscular response, I think is one of those things that I've tried to talk to parents about, because I think what's very frustrating with parents is because, like Omar was saying, is in regards to, you know, they talk to their coaches, you know, and they say, and the coach goes, oh, well, it's because, you know, he hasn't figured this out yet, or, you know, he's not doing this or not doing that or whatever. And then I think a lot of just that negative talk, just like, you know, and I think Saskia's talked about this too, is like that just all that negative stimuli just makes the kid freeze, because now they start questioning every little thing they do, from coming off their line to coming out for a cross, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know how much I believe in, you have to allow the kid to fail. You know, like I think it's a good point to bring up, like, you know, the parrying issue. Like, you know, you have
It's been one of those episodes.
Well, to dive in that a little bit more, stress, trauma, overuse, fatigue, things of that nature are gonna.
My dogs are stressing me out.
Yeah.
No. So my point being is that I think that we've talked about in practice, in everything, like you know, coaches out there, part of teaching is allowing the kids to fail. When, you know, you train during the week, you make your tweaks, you work on everything, get into the game, don't joystick, allow them to fail, talk to them about it and everything. You're not going to fix it by yelling. You're not going to do that. Don't traumatize the kid. Like they'll shut down. Yep. In my opinion. And now they'll get so nervous during the game because they've already made one mistake, and I'm pretty sure they know it because the ball's probably in the back of the net, that you know, how do we move forward from that in this moment? And then during the week in practice, we can go backwards and say, okay, let's look at this. You know, why did this happen? But in the moment, like yelling, and trust me, I've been there. I've been on the sideline, yelling, screaming at somebody. Everybody knows they made the mistake. Like now they're going to shut down. Now they're going to be so worried to make the decision they made that made the mistake. Maybe it was the wrong decision at that time, but it might be the right decision at another time. But now they're not going to do it, you know, because you've just ripped them. So you're
using really interesting terminology as well, because you're using the word shut down quite a bit. And as I was starting to say, that stress, trauma, overuse, fatigue, other emotional factors actually diminish communication signals from the brain to that muscle tissue. So an extreme example would be, I don't know, someone's being attacked and people just kind of stand around and watch. Their arousal levels go way too high, and their communication from the brain to that tissue shuts down. So they actually don't do anything. They just kind of go full possum. So if we're creating an environment where there is that fear response, you're not going to get any sort of movement efficiency, or actually just call it safe movement either. Their injury risk is going to go higher and higher. You know, and I'm not saying, you know, people are going to go, oh, they're being soft with them. It's like, no, you got to teach them the right way. You know, you can be encouraging and you know, have I don't know, give proper responsibilities to everybody and have the right attitude for things without being, you know, fearmonger. You know, like
absolutely.
You know, I was just go ahead, Ben.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, one thing that went while you're talking that I was just thinking about, and I know this is a conversation that Omar and I have had, is that when athletes are so forced into, like you were talking about, overtraining, so doing the same things over and over and over again, and their burnout rate, you know, Omar's always talked about, you know, when he was a kid, how his parents allowed him to play basketball and allowed him to, you know, do football and on all sorts of other things. And because of that, he developed the confidence to be unorthodox with his movements. When it came to the game, he didn't feel like he had to do things a certain way because his body was comfortable doing things that other kids. I mean, Omar, you've had this conversation. You know, we've had this conversation how there were other goalkeepers you worked with, literally did not know how to move if it wasn't in goal.
Yeah, I mean, they were very inside the 18, you know, shameless plug for our podcast, but like inside the 18, they knew exactly what their movement was, and everything outside they didn't know how to do. And I think, I don't know, this is like a character fault that I hate and I love about myself, is that I like to try things, and if I don't like it, I stop doing it. And sometimes if I, you know, learn something from a coach, I had my goalkeeper coach was my uncle, and he played in Mexico. And his idea was every loose ball you go get. Doesn't matter where it is, be reckless, go get it. And then I tried it once in a game. I gave a penalty. I think I got a yellow card, not a red card. But after that, I was like, that was stupid. Why did I do that? And then I was just like, well, maybe not be so literal, but at the same time, like, okay, I tried something, I didn't like it, move on. So I think, again, a lot of kids nowadays, we're talking about that fear, is that they're afraid to try something. And by not trying it, they live in this comfort zone. And, you know, for me, playing in different sports and playing in different things that force your body to, you know, kind of, for me at least, understand what is this going to be useful for in goalkeeping? Whether it's playing defense, getting down to a good position where I'm still athletic, where I can move around screens, but I'm still fast enough where I can really, impose myself as a goalkeeper, as well as what set position from a good distance, from a close distance, am I going to be? Am I going to be too short? Am I too low? Am I going to be too high? What is it? So for me, it's just like that curiosity, which I think a lot of kids is stunted by because of those voices, because of those coaches who have never played the position. So they don't know how to communicate the right ways. For us,
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I try to lead with empathy every time I have sessions where I'm like, yo, I know you've been on like 3-week cruise. Like, I'm not stupid. I see your Instagram posts. I know you're not going to be 100%. So when you come back to me and you're not 100%, I'm not going to be angry at you because I understand where you're coming from and where your body was, where your mind was. However, if I'm going to tell you anything, is don't just come out here and say, okay, this is my 1 or 2 practices that I need to get back to, full speed. Think about it as, okay, what are the technical things that I can focus on? Seeing the ball all the way through for my catches, taking the ball all the way to the ground, seeing it all the way through. So all those little technical things and fundamental things that when you actually are back to full speed, you can actually say, hey, I worked on it even though I wasn't 100%. So it's just, for us as coaches, it's like, can regular field coaches be forced to take goalkeeping coaching courses where they understand the proper communication to these goalkeepers so that they don't get into their head, they don't stunt their imagination or curiosity, so that when they do try something new and it does work or it doesn't work, they can process it for themselves versus having that extra voice trying to help them process it.
That's a big conversation, isn't it?
But I would hope, that's what I'm saying. Hopefully the people at the right places listen to this podcast, and but
yeah, that good luck with that. That's going to be a wild one. Yeah. But you bring up something that was interesting. You said, people that move like a goalkeeper, and I see a kid doing that. That's a red flag for me, to a certain degree, or something I want to pay attention to. One of the first kids I worked with in my, call it, new career or whatever, was a 13-year-old girl who was a goalkeeper who had torn labrums in both her hips, and it was from overuse too. And those are the things that I had that kind of derailed my career and ended it. But I was a pro athlete that signed a piece of paper saying, I'm going to get paid to do this. And I'm acknowledging that I'm probably putting my body on the line. Having a kid at that age come to me with those kind of issues really, really was an eye opener, and made me think, is like, I have to figure out how to train these kids differently. If they're going to do it, they got to figure out how to train different patterns, different movements, things that they're not doing over and over again, because we need to even them out and get them to at least stabilize their joints so they move well. If a kid comes to me and says, "Oh, yeah, I'm super tight all the time," that's another red flag that their joints are unstable. That tightness sensation, which is a protective mechanism, is letting them know that there's a check engine light going on, and we need to figure out where a problem is in their body. Outside of traditional methods of, just stretch that tightness away, which doesn't do anything because the muscle itself doesn't stretch. And that's, if people want to argue with me on that one, we can go into another podcast about that. But do things that help stabilize your body and get your brain really in tune with these positions and all these muscles. And then all of a sudden you're going to get freedom in motion. And all of a sudden maybe you will stop running like a goalkeeper and run a little bit more like an athletic human. That's what we need to start with. And that just tailors back to, okay, how well is the brain communicating? What factors go into all that stuff? Mental, emotional, physical. What's your history? Where are you at in life? Like, you got to ask all these questions to really get a good grasp of that individual to maximize them. It's a lot.
I love how Saskia just did this, because you're literally preaching to the choir right here with Saskia. I mean, this is something she brings up over and over and over again, especially at the youth levels. And obviously Saskia, when you have players come into the collegiate environment, that the highest level collegiate environment, and they've already have these issues, it's going to be difficult for you.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it takes getting them younger is always better. But I agree with you so much, Ben, because be an athlete. And I always say that. Don't move the way you think a goalkeeper is supposed to move, or somebody taught you to move as an athlete. Mm-hmm. And be fluid in your movement, because it's the best thing for your body, and go with your body. And I can help you do the technical side of it within that movement. And that will produce the best goalkeeper you can be. And I'm a big proponent of that. you know, because you get kids in here and they're so, you know, this is the way I'm supposed to do it. I'm supposed to shuffle across the goal and I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to do that. Not everything works the same. Some people, you know, do, you know, the spin turn to get up, and other people kick a leg out. But it's literally what works best for that individual. And you know how I feel about that, Michael. Be an athlete. And I'll look at even my college keepers. I'll be like, just get to the spot. Like, get there. Like, and your last step, you know, slow down your body, get into a set position, but get from A to B as an athlete. Get there. I'm not telling you have to shuffle step. I'm not telling you have to cross over. I'm not doing anything like that. How is your body naturally going to handle this? If it's totally wrong, then, you know, we'll work on it, but we'll work within your movements as an athlete, as an individual.
And yeah, I'm with you. And once we get past the, you know, in my world, the intake process, learning all the factors that go in this, learning this human as best I can, because that's what I'm really trying to do when I do an intake is, okay, what are all these things that apply to you? What can be things that might inhibit this process? What things are going to maximize this process? Now we're going, okay, how do we move from point A to point B as efficiently as possible? If that first movement is good, then you're going to get to be a little bit better and you're going to be able to do C really, really well. Now, if we want to start looking at the mechanics of things, there's definitely some positions that are probably advantageous to certain scenarios more than other ones, but that's scenario based. We have to take a look at it, you know, and then we can start looking at joint positions of what part of their foot are they pushing off with? Where's their ankle position getting loaded? We can, okay, where's their knee going? What are their pronation, supination characteristics? You know, that's one thing I really look at is, okay, are you supinating where you should be? And if not, what joint segment is doing it, which isn't? And then I start to work on those muscles that are responsible for taking those bones into those positions. And if those aren't communicating very well, that's what we do. And we take a step back and we work on some of that stuff. And that's what we do in-house in the gym. That's not a field thing. In the field, it's kind of, okay, we're going to be doing head down traditional goalkeeper training, applying some of the concepts that we've learned in the gym through the evaluation process. And again, through that evaluation process, we also learn a common language together. So when I'm cueing this person, we can kind of have a better grasp that the information I'm giving them or giving each other, essentially, we're on the same page with it. So, you know, you look at a goalkeeper who moves like a goalkeeper and they're like, well, I was told to move this way. And like, well, you go to the coach, is that really what you wanted them to do? You know, that can't be what you wanted them to do. I can't imagine you're okay with that. So there's lots that goes into it, and it's what I've learned is it's like, holy cow, this is complicated. And then I've started to grasp a little bit, and I go, holy cow, there's a lot of opportunities to really help someone get better in different ways, and in ways that doesn't necessarily mean you have to load them to the 10th degree and do more and more and more and more and more, because that's what I did as a pro athlete, and that's why my pro career was very, very short.
Ben, I think you brought up a really good point right there, and I want to ask Omar this because I think, you know, as a maturation of you as a younger goalkeeper coach, Omar, you know, very advanced for your age, but a younger goalkeeper coach, is that, you know, you started recognizing that you were just giving the goalkeepers more of the same that they were getting at their club in a private environment. You weren't really doing anything that was supplementing their training. And Omar, do you think a lot of that has to do with just the fact that, like, people like Ben, there needs to be more of a collaboration, there needs to be more of a communication, and honestly, there needs to be more curiosity by younger goalkeeper coaches to want to learn how the body moves, why things work the way they do, as opposed to just focusing on the X's and O's, you know.
1,000%. And I think if I would have had someone like Ben, like growing up and playing, he probably would have instilled all the valuable tools that I'm, you know, currently learning now and realizing now as a coach. But I would have been able to have that in my career. And I feel like, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times, a lot of players, I mean, of course, contracts and opportunities are one thing, but also too, your body starts to break down from compounding movements, doing it the wrong way for so many years. And like, I mean, I just started to get into running about a year ago during COVID, and I started watching all these YouTubers, and I'm realizing you're supposed to run like the outside of your foot hitting the ground first, and then it's supposed to just kind of like go like that. And I'm like, no wonder for so many years, my knees, my hips, my glutes, all these things have been hurting and hurting and hurting. And I've never been able to understand why. So from Ben, it's from your experience, and like Sas just said, I wish I got them a little bit younger, but like, how many kids do you get probably who are a little bit, past their prime or, 18 and up or something like that, but at a younger age when you're just like, okay, if I can just fix this in you and have you understand, not just fixing it, but understand why you're supposed to do this a certain way, why this movement is supposed to be done a certain way, you're going to be miles and miles ahead of the competition, or, head and shoulders above the players in your own ODP or, national team camp.
Yeah. All the time. And to circle back, the collaboration with the club coaches, luckily in the area that I'm in, a lot of the club coaches are clients of mine. So they come in for their own physical issues. So, Marcus Hanneman at Crossfire, he comes in and gets his back work done. And I work on Tommy from the Sounders and, work on his body as well. So it's kind of turned into a cool thing where I can collaborate, and then I can talk to them about the players that they coach that I work with, and we can make sure we're on the same page a little bit with that. So that's kind of interesting too. And the running thing, you land, force application and force absorption is going to go through toes 3, 4, 5 in that little pad right there, and it's going to go up your body. Pressure wave.
I'm sorry, you guys.
It's all good.
It's all good.
God.
And it goes up in a pressure wave through your body. And if you're going through the big toe, that pressure wave might pull you into a wrong position and really stress out maybe the insider knee, and knock on wood, in the women's game, that knee thing that we don't like to have happens a little bit more when that's the case. But, back to your question, with youth athletes, the earlier I can get them and try to teach them, depending on where the brain is developmentally, to see if they can even understand it, the better. I now have a second niche within my career of working with pro athletes who have been doing it for a long time in their ways, and are recognizing that they need to change some things. So now we can offer up different ways of training. And I get baseball players and MLS guys and all over the spectrum coming to me for that kind of information and different ways to prep their body for what they're supposed to do. There's a paradigm shift happening in the training world on how to get things done a little bit more efficiently, which is exciting, and it's cool to be a part of. And I wouldn't be able to share these experiences and share this knowledge without me having to go through it in a negative way a lot of times, both mentally and physically, emotionally for sure, which allows me to connect with these guys and women to answer the questions that they're seeking out, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that oh, sorry. I think that for me, like I identified that like at not a young age, but at the beginning of my career, that to be efficient in everything, I had to seek out the proper training of it. And so even for me, I trained with the Rutgers track coach to understand the proper way to get explosiveness off the line and to work on how to run properly and to utilize, I get it. We're all athletes and we're soccer players, but if you want to do things specifically, you have to figure out how to do it properly.
Right.
And that was just something kind of ingrained in me, in a sense, like, all right, well, I'm not the best runner. I hate running too, Mike. But how do I do this to get the best out of my body and my body type? And I went to the track coach at Rutgers, and I put my time in. And I learned, how to do that. And I think, not everybody has that outlet, but there are ways to find it. Not everything is soccer. If you want to be the best player, the best goalkeeper, the best athlete, then, what is it that you're deficient at, and how do you improve that? And sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean training harder as a goalkeeper. It means figuring out things. It means, how do I get more explosive off my line? Well, let's talk to a sprinting coach, So
for sure. And is your body in a good position to explode out of it anyway? And that's something to look at. And we all hate running because we're goalkeepers, and it's a wrong energy system. We're not trained in that one. That's why it's harder for us for a lot of times. But one of the biggest avenues to kind of explore some of this information I was getting was when I joined up with the Seattle Reign, the women's team, because they actually employed me to do some of the rehab stuff. They employed me to coach the goalkeepers, and and I was a strength coach. So I was in meetings, you know, I was part of the medical staff. I was in meetings with the owners talking about players because I was a coach, a technical coach, and then, you know, communicating with the trainers from a strength training perspective. And it really gave me an opportunity to utilize and take all this information that I had and bring it into a technical session. And you know, one of the earliest people I worked with was Hope. And to get some of this information across to her, who is, I don't get starstruck very often, but when I met her for the first time, I was like, oh man, she has a presence about her that was pretty impressive. But to get her, you know, vulnerable enough to actually get on the massage table with her goalkeeper coach and go through these rehab, you know, exercises, and then transition it into the weight room, and then transition it onto the field, and then really be able to connect on that level, really, you know, it took our relationship to a whole nother level and made us on the same page on a whole nother level, because she was vulnerable enough now to say, yeah, my knees bug me today, or something's going on. And we can take that into account, which was super useful, because she was used to, I'm going to push through all this stuff and it's not going to be a problem, you know. And leading up to the 2015 World Cup, she would come into my facility, and you know, the first thing we would do on that day would be, okay, get on these scales, one foot on one foot on the other, close your eyes, get yourself set, and be balanced. And then when she was loading plus 25 pounds on one leg versus the other leg, and we go, you feel balanced? She's like, yeah. I go, well, your brain is interpreting balance in a goofy way today. We got to figure that out. So we would go on the massage table, do some manual muscle testing.
Alert from calendar.
I'm having a nightmare.
Oh, good.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Finish up, Ben. It's awesome.
Yeah, we would check out these joint positions, see how well our brain was communicating. A lot of times they weren't, because she was either compensating for old injuries or whatever, and we would get the muscles to fire a little bit better through some of the techniques that I know. And then we go back on that scale, check it again, and kind of calibrate her. And she's like, okay, feel good. And I was like, yep, you look pretty centered. And then we would start our training from there. And that's what we started to do on a daily to make sure she stayed healthy. And then I started doing that with all the goalkeepers, and then I started doing that with all the players. And then pretty quickly, I didn't have any time. But that's how things have evolved. And that started to branch out into a lot of different avenues for me. So, I don't know how I started on that rant, but I started talking about it.
But Ben, I got a question for you, because the thing is that, like, I remember hearing an interview with Tim Howard a few years back when he came back to MLS and started playing with Colorado. And he started basically stating the fact that as an older athlete, as a veteran athlete, that he didn't have a choice but to learn how to move more efficiently, because what he could get away with when he was younger, he could not get away with anymore. If he didn't move exactly in the right direction, if his shift was slightly off, he didn't have the same reaction speed that he did before. And now he couldn't compensate as well as he could before. So now he'd get caught, whereas before he could be leaning one direction and compensate because he was so powerful and still move across. Is that something that you come across quite a bit?
Oh, daily, all the time. That's what I'm looking at. When we get through all the nitty gritty of, okay, is the brain communicating its muscle tissue? What's your, all that stuff that I've been talking about? It's, can we track point A to point B? How is your center mass moving in the correct direction, even when you begin to think about unweighting your leg? Now, the combination of your center mass, is it shifting in the correct direction? Are you applying the right force with your back leg to transition your shoulders over that stepping leg to make an attempt at the ball? And am I saying this? Am I asking the athlete, are you doing this? I'm not doing that, because it has to happen too fast for you to do that. But that's what I'm looking at in slow motion when I'm evaluating it through a camera. And then when I see little hitches like that, then I see, first off, is the brain communicating to the tissues that are supposed to help maximize this movement pattern or help decelerate this movement pattern. And if they're not, then I can check those, and then I can do some exercises to make sure it is communicating the right way. And if it's not, we work on that, and then we reinforce it, from a position where all this stuff is communicating efficiently. And then typically the brain starts to remap pretty quickly and learn that stuff, unless there's bigger issues. But yeah, that's what we're looking at. And, if you break it down to every joint segment, so you have your foot, you have your tib, fib, femur, all the way up the chain, everything's got mass to it. So are all those masses filling out the requirements of the math equation that it is movement to get to that position? and that's one way I look at it. Does one shoulder have a negative value, and actually is it taking you the wrong way versus the other one? We got to look at what's lagging behind here, and you can break that down all the way to communication from the nervous system, or you can just kind of simply go, yeah, your head was a little bit late, or your shoulder's not coming across, and then they could fix it on the fly. And it depends on the person.
Yeah. Omar, go ahead.
No, I just I mean, from a young goalkeeping coach where I was a few years ago to where I am now, my language and the way I articulate points has gotten so much better. And I'm sure, with the kids that I've trained for years now, they understand a certain language and I can say it in 1 or 2 words. But Ben, for you, did you feel like it was difficult for you to find ways to communicate everything you're saying now in an articulate way? And you know what I mean? Like where it wasn't overcomplicating for them, where they weren't like, okay, you see what I'm saying?
Overcomplicated everything.
Okay, good. I'm glad it wasn't just me.
Poor Haley Kottmeyer. She came out like the better end of it, but yeah, because I was going through it, and my brain gets going, and I get stimulated, and I start saying a bunch of stuff, and I get ranty, and I'm like, I think about something, I keep going, and then that's the art of coaching, is really, okay, how simply can you give the information? You may be able to think that way, but can you give it in a more effective and called efficient way? Using external cues really helps. And then again, it depends on the person you're working with. You get the relationship with that person over time. Some athletes really like that extra information. Some athletes like that extra information, but it inhibits them because it makes them think too much. You just got, that's where you're learning the learner and trying to figure out what really works for them. But simple cues, a lot of external cues, really is where it's at. And then you can think about it on your own. And maybe in a video session outside of that arena, you can kind of break it down and look at it and say, hey, take a look at that. And we can kind of create that awareness and work on it in a different setting. But when it's on the field, you don't want them thinking too much like that.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
But no, I was going to ask you, Ben, to follow up with that is when it comes to coaches like myself or coaches who don't have a background in this, who don't have resources to get their goalkeepers, people like you, on a daily basis or weekly basis, is there like a standard, let's say, testing that we can do with our goalkeepers? Or is it just like trusting our eye and then communicating what we see? Or is any advice for us coaches to be like, hey, I want you to get on a Bosu ball. Your right leg is heavier than the left one. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to copy what you were saying, but something similar so that we can kind of evaluate it with our naked eye without having experience like you do.
I'm making it right now.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay. That's another plug for you. So tell us a little about what is it program?
A basic evaluation program, a basic biomechanical evaluation, and then some complementary things you can do with that to increase effectiveness in whatever they're diminished in. So a lot of things need to be what's called potentiated. Are we familiar with that term?
I'll tell you that I am, but I have no idea.
When you start, let's take running as an example. When you start running, it's not fun, right? You're running, you're like, why am I doing this whole thing? And then after a certain amount of time, you start to get your stride and you feel like, man, I'm a great runner. And then pretty quickly reality sets back in and you get inefficient again at what you're doing, which is what we all do. If we can get our athletes into the, man, I'm a great runner phase through some exercises before they start doing, say, goalkeeping, and then keep it in that efficient zone, then we're going to keep them safer. They're going to learn the things that we want them to learn, hopefully a little bit better, and we keep them out of that extreme fatigue where things go haywire. So different strategies to get them into that zone, which will keep things safe. It's about getting the brain communicating as efficiently as possible.
For sure.
Gotcha. It's funny that, one thing that you mentioned, Ben, in regards to the overcomplication, and Omar, I know that you'd elaborate on that as well too, because Saskia, this is something that we've actually talked about in the past, and that is an understanding who you're coaching, because I think one of the biggest issues I've seen, Ben, and Saskia, you can add on to this, but is that you've got people training 9s, 10s, 11s, and they're talking to them like they're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And that's just going to cause kids to, because it's so complicated, they're not going to be able to move the way you want them to, because they don't understand. They can't comprehend what you're trying to get at.
Mm. Well, I mean, does it really have to be that complicated? To be honest with you, it shouldn't be. I don't care if you're coaching 25-year-olds. It doesn't matter. It's not that complicated. It should be simple. And if younger kids aren't getting it, a lot of times visuals help, and cues help, and everybody reacts to information and education differently. Again, you have to know your players, but it really shouldn't be that complicated. And it like you said, Ben, you're like, I overcomplicated it in the beginning. It shouldn't. There is a way to give the information, to teach and everything like that without like blowing up somebody's brain.
For sure. And I overcomplicated out of excitement. I was like, wow, this is a
I
great idea.
know,
I like
of
what I'm doing. I'm like, don't you guys think this is cool? I think this is awesome.
You sound like Omar. That's what Omar does. We listened to him on the podcast, and he's like, anyway, very, very complicated way for me to say just move slightly to the right, but you guys get the idea. So
yeah, there's a great book out there called The Language of Coaching that's really, really good, and it's just about simplifying the cueing to get things done, especially those younger ages. The cueing can complicate things, and they can try so hard to do. The thing about cueing in general is the coach is giving information to an athlete. The athlete's brain is bringing in that information. It's going into their body, and they're creating a solution to the words that the coach hopefully gets across, because the coach is searching for something. And you're trying to paint a picture, and if neither of you really have an experience in that picture, how do you know if you're getting it down right? You would take a goalkeeping exercise. Okay, they got to do a mid-range dive to the left, whatever. You foot service, hand service. Coach is like, well, I want it to look like this, and then the goalkeeper's like, okay, and then does it and goes, that was it, wasn't it? And the coach is like, no, that wasn't it. And then they look at a video. We'll do it like De Gea does it here. It's like, okay, I'll try it like that. It's like you got to find a way to get through all that stuff, so you're both on the same page, and you both have a cool picture in your brain of what you want it to look like, and what you want it, more importantly, to feel like. I don't know if more importantly is the right word, but what it feels like. For me, my first movement as an efficient athlete should feel like I'm getting closer to a shot. My first movement should bring me into, my first position should bring me into a position where I can do the next thing well. And that's all we're searching for. Yeah. And that's it. And if you start to dial that down, then all of a sudden things start to click in more and more. It's like, well, I really feel like I'm close to that one. You're on the right track, because your body's going to do what it should do mechanically if you allow it to. And if you don't get in its way, without considering, orthopedic history and different things like that. But if you don't gum it up with all the words, and you take this brain and you go kind of neck down and feel a lot of things, you're going to get into good positions, and then you can kind of micro progress and change things from there in a good, clear way. But we get in our own ways a lot of time. Absolutely. Even as far as going into the, for coaches out there, into the drills you're setting up, like how complicated are they? Like they shouldn't be. Like it's all concepts. Yeah, it shouldn't be like a big dummy and a flag and this over there and that over there and this over there. It's like I get that there's a purpose, but simplicity is best, because when I tell my goalkeepers, even when they're having a bad day, I'm like, what's the best way to deal with this right now? The best way to deal with this is just go back to the basics and be simple. Don't overthink this. Don't overanalyze this. Just let's slow it down. Let's just be simple. Catch, position, angles, do what you got to do. Like, don't overcomplicate it. Don't overcomplicate it. And that's where I've separated things. I've that type of work where it's okay, we need to work on a mechanical movement. I do it in the gym. I do it in the gym with mirrors, so you can see it. You have all sorts of different type of feedback. I know what kind of learner you are based off how I've spoken to you in the past, and that's where we get some of that stuff done. And on the field, it's catch the ball, block the ball, throw the ball. Like, thank you.
Thank you.
But-
And it really is. And look, I get it. Listen, I'll throw something out there. Okay. Look, it's a natural reaction for any human being that if somebody kicks something at them, they want to duck or they want to like flinch backwards. It's a natural reaction for anybody. Okay.
Mhm.
Goalkeepers, that's not we have to kind of dial that out of goalkeepers. So there's a difference. There's something where like, no, your first reaction can't be to go like this. It can't be a flinch backwards. We have to kind of lean into the ball. So that's something you have to kind of train out of young kids and stuff like that, because
Sure.
it is a natural reaction for anybody. If I do something at you, you want to duck, you know? But when it comes down to it, and when your goalkeepers have that, 100%, just catch the ball, block the ball, just trust it, you know? Like don't just overanalyze it. Don't make it that difficult. It's not that, it is difficult, but it's not that difficult. You're getting in your own way as a goalkeeper.
And Ben, good question for you. And I think, one of those things for, throughout quarantine, throughout COVID, having different coaches on the podcast, we're just talking to them and they would mention, hey, if this guy's successful at doing it, why change it? And that was kind of one of those things where all young coaches were like, oh crap. Okay. So maybe I shouldn't try to, put my touch on them. That's how I was. Always want people to go, oh, he worked with Omar. Oh, he worked with this. He worked with that. So for you as a coach, as a movement coach and all that kind of stuff, like, aren't there certain movements that are efficient for certain people that to your eye as a professional, right? Trained professional, you go, that doesn't look right. But if it's successful for them, how have you navigated around stepping in and changing it, or maybe making it more efficient? How have you kind of handled that?
Well, it depends. You're looking at things like structure of their body, and then, maybe there's a movement pattern that fits that structure a little bit better. Or, what I would perceive as awkward motion for some people, for them, it feels great. And, why do we want to tweak that? It depends if they're even open-minded to looking at that avenue anyway, right? That's an exploration that they have to be willing to go on, for one, depending on the level of that athlete, right? Now, if it's a younger person and that's an injury risk, I might go, okay, we got to do this to keep you safe. If you're a pro athlete and you've been doing it for years, you got to be open-minded to doing it. It may still be an injury risk, but if you feel more comfortable doing it that way, you've signed that paperwork and you're doing it. But a lot of times you don't get that kind of pushback, even with, I've worked with the Cy Young pitchers and Gold Glove, baseball players and MLS goalkeepers, and they want that information. They want to get better for the most part. They want little details that can make them better if the information is given the correct way. There's not a lot of pushback there. It just depends. You have to be at the right point of your career to be open-minded to that too, and wanting that information. And I'm not in any way proclaiming to anyone that this is the way you do stuff 100%. This is what I've seen in my practice, and this is how I think about things, but it's just the way that I think about it. It's not like I'm not in a lab with all these sensors on these people monitoring every little detail. And they do that in certain settings. And I also think that's called overthinking as well. Yeah. You have to have the relationship with the person and have their trust to even begin to have that conversation. And then you go from there. And then if they find success with it, then maybe you're making some headway there. You don't look at someone, they say they're not into it because this is what's worked for them. You don't go, who needs them? You kind of get clever with how you talk to them, and then you offer it up, and then that's as far as you can go with it. Younger people probably take it personally. Go ahead. Younger people probably take it personally. If you allow your ego to get in the way of your coaching. Thankfully, I'm getting old enough where it's like, if you don't want that information, I don't care. That's okay. You'll come back around, and if I can help you in that part, then I'm thankful.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that like a good example would be Lauren's got an awkward throw. All right, we'll talk about my starting goalkeeper at UCL. She's got an awkward throw. Now, one of my strongest points when I was playing was my throw as well. One hopping the midfield, but it was kind of technically the throw you'd want to teach a goalkeeper. Lauren's is awkward, and I've mulled over it, watched it. We've talked about it. I'm not tweaking it. That girl can rip a ball. She can throw the ball, one hop, like on distribution, on point, one hop at the midfield. It's not, if you were to do a cookie cutter, it's not you know, what you teach a 10-year-old, but it's on point for her. And mechanically with her body, it works. And it's a gray area. It's getting the job done. And tweaking it wasn't working, or just suggesting it, we tried it, you know, not as much distance, not as much power and stuff. I'm like, fine, you know.
Yeah.
And you have again, it's a gray area, and not everybody's the same. There's not a handbook. This is how you catch, this is how you throw, this is how you kick, this is how you punt, this is how you dive, it doesn't work that way.
Her brain and nervous system has come up with a solution to a problem.
Absolutely.
And has done it in a way that makes sense to her body. And whether that started years ago with cueing that was goofy and that's kind of how she mapped her brain to do it, or that's just what felt strongest to her at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes full circle back to overtraining as a developing young athlete. Is like they start doing things that may not look technically right because that's what they have to offer at the moment. You know,
but I don't also know, like physiologically, I don't know if she's pigeon-toed. I don't know if that has something to do. I don't know if that has something to do. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, structure could dictate the function, and trying to tweak it might be a disservice to them and actually cause more problems than it's worth. So if it's not a problem, it may not be a problem.
Yeah, I'm not fixing it. Sorry, it's working.
I mean, well, to go real quick, what people are looking at is the skin. You realize that when you're looking at movement, you're looking at how their skin's moving. You don't see underneath. You can't tell how well those muscles are contracting. You don't know what's going on inside their joints that are really affecting things. You don't know how the brain is communicating that tissue. So she may have, everyone's got little ticking time bombs in their body that have developed over years. And if you're not aware of that, or at least respecting that that's a possibility, you're getting reckless.
Yeah. Ben, you just made my head explode because that's literally something I've never heard in my life. That is so awesome. About like all you're seeing is skin. You're not seeing what's actually going on underneath the skin. That has just made me rethink how to teach how to teach movement. My gosh, wow.
But you have to, and like I said, even break it down. Like it's an entire body thing. It's not, oh, you're supposed to throw this way. Like I said, she's pigeon-toed. I don't know, like. You know, Ben would probably be better at assessment than me, but that might factor into the way she throws and why she throws this way. She's figured it out. She's worked it out, and it's efficient and it's effective and it's strong as can be. Yeah. You know, and if I try to tweak that based on my bodies, to answer Omar's question, my physiology and how I throw and how I step into the ball, and it's not going to work.
Yeah, so you have to maximize the individual athlete. So what I would do with something like that is I would go through their assessment, biomechanical assessment, and see what they have. What's your cone of motion for your shoulder joint? What's your foot's interaction with the ground? Because that's all a pressure rate from the ground going all the way up to the end of that ball. Yep. So it starts with that foot. How do you transfer the loading from back to front? Like, what's your rotational capabilities in your trunk and spine? Where are your deceleration points? Are they working very well? What modes of muscle contractions are good or bad? Like, I would go through all that before I even thought about really attacking the problem. And if you don't have that information, you don't have that information.
Yeah, and I'm leaving it alone.
Yeah.
It's working.
That's where you send her my way. Then we'll
you got it. You might end up seeing her at some point because she's kicking ass. So
good.
Ben, I got a question for you because there's actually somebody in the comment section who brought something up, which is actually really important. Is that Chris Silowich, and he wants to know if you've seen any physical issues, wear and tear from youth goalkeepers that are training on different surfaces because they're being trained the same on one surface as they are on another surface, as opposed to taking those surfaces into account.
Does he mean alternating surfaces?
Yes.
Yeah, because your brain is going to interpret when you put your foot on the ground. Your brain's going to expect a response, right, from the earth pushing back up. And if that surface changes rapidly, so goalkeepers go and warm up on turf and then they come over and train on grass, or vice versa, what your body's gotten used to is you're going to feel something a little bit different. So yeah, there's definitely deceleration injuries that happen there. There's different things that happen in that circumstance, because the expectation that you've just subconsciously trained into your body is that when I put my foot down, this is what I'm going to feel. And if it's not the same, there might be enough physics to cause a problem for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's interesting that was brought up, because I think, you know, when we're talking about injury, and I've seen this, and I think I've honestly was probably a culprit of kids getting hurt when I was a younger goalkeeper coach, and because of just a lack of education, or not doing more. I again it was one of those things where, and I'm not trying to put blame on clubs or anything like that, but a lot of times at youth clubs, the program director will walk around and they'll say goalkeepers aren't working hard enough. Goalkeepers aren't working hard enough. I mean, that's my biggest pet peeve. But they'll walk by and they'll say, hey, they need to work. They need to work. Field players are working. Why aren't the goalkeepers working? As opposed to really taking into consideration what they're doing, how stressful their load is, because they want them constantly moving as if they're outfield players, which is a huge issue. How do we help outfield coaches understand that it can't be that way based on the movements you're asking of the goalkeeper and the demands?
Well, yeah, the terminology, oh, sorry, I cut somebody off.
No.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know
no,
how much
I mean,
this pisses me off, Mike. So.
Yeah.
I know.
The terminology work and what's that mean to the athlete that you're working with? A goalkeeper's version of work is so much different than an outfielder's version of work to a certain degree in certain scenarios. Well, first things first. A lot of outfield coaches have an expectation of what a goalkeeper is. There's a predetermined visual of what they think a goalkeeper looks like, and they think goalkeepers are crazy, and maybe to a certain degree they are, because they have to reach a proper arousal level to do the crazy things that we need to do. It's a requirement. I mean, you brought it up earlier about not pulling back when a shot comes, because
you want to get hit by the ball.
You need to have that. Yeah. And studies show to get to the right arousal level, it needs to be about 65-75% of what you got. If it goes if it goes too much higher, you're going to start to freeze up a little bit. If it's too low, you won't have what you need to do. You won't do it at the right speed. And there's actually chemical changes that happen and hormones that are released that kind of affect all that stuff. But the coaches have a visual that the goalkeeper should be jumping over a garbage can, rolling under a rope, and diving through, doing a karate kick through some plywood, and
else they're not working.
Or else they're not working. When in reality, maybe what you need to work on is doing one shot and doing one shot really well, because that's what you're going to see.
Yes.
And working on that mental side of it. And, I would turn around and go to that club coach and go, you need to figure out how to integrate a goalkeeper into your session, instead of just putting them in the goal and having them get shot on the entire time.
Absolutely.
Maybe you work on your part. I'll work on my part.
Yeah.
Ben, I love the fact that you just said
that. Trust me, Ben, I've done that.
I love that you've said that, because I think that there's a lot of outfield coaches out there who, and it's no fault of their own. It's just with their lack of education or not taking the time. But in their mind, they are incorporating the goalkeeper, because once they've trained with the goalkeeper coach and they go off to them, well, now this is the part of the activity where I needed a goalkeeper. And needing a goalkeeper and incorporating a goalkeeper is a very different thing.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm guilty. I've created a couple of monsters, youth soccer goalkeepers, that when they get shot on a lot, they'll yell at the coach, "I'm training the wrong energy system," which, like,
oh my gosh.
They came in and told me that, and I was dying laughing.
That's amazing.
You can't do that, but I appreciate it, and it's great. Yeah, I mean, the reality is the goalkeeper now in the modern games needs to be training a lot of different energy systems, because of how much time they're spending using with the ball at their feet. I mean, they have to be an outfield player now, so they got to train all that stuff, which adds another version of loading onto a goalkeeper and another complication to your periodization and your loading strategies throughout the week.
Yeah.
So, or opportunities, whichever way you want to look at it. That alone is, I think, more of a indication that goalkeepers need to become, more well-rounded athletes, because they're the requirements of the position are doing more and more stuff.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's about time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there needs more. It's education.
It is
more and more
education. 100%.
Which kind of segues in. Omar, are you still there, by the way? Because we see the lovely.
Hey, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
My back. I'm having back issues, so I have to stand up. So it's just sorry.
Oh my god. No worries, man. I was like, did he? I'm like, this
What are you,
episode's been all over
20?
the
What are you,
place.
28? Yeah, it's about
Dude, I
time.
know. I need
It's about
Ben in
time
my
for
life.
those. It's about
Yeah.
time for those back issues.
So if you're somebody like Omar Zeenni, who's 28 years old and he's having chronic back issues already, Ben, what advice is, as we start wrapping everything up? No, I'm joking. But in regards to young coaches out there who go, okay, well, I don't really know this world. And I think, one of the biggest mistakes that I think a lot of coaches make out there is they go, I don't know this world, so I'm not going to tackle it because I don't know this world, as opposed to saying, I don't know this world. How am I going to learn about this world? What are some resources that coaches can go out to better prepare them for working with their athletes in this factor?
Well, one, don't feel bad for not knowing this stuff, because I don't know a lot of people who do know this stuff. And I've spent about 10 years, 12 years working on this stuff. So to the degree that I'm talking about some of this information, I wouldn't expect people to know it. And I wouldn't even expect them to worry about it, to be honest. That's something for someone who's educated enough to do that, who's in that field to do it. I'm in a unique position because there's not a lot of technical coaches that do what I do, that integrate all of these aspects into what the product is, including the rehab side of things and all that stuff. In terms of resources, the community is getting bigger and bigger. And, you look at kind of, Phil Wedden and how he's kind of spearheaded international goalkeeping conferences and things like that. He's got a lot of good information and resources. The educational GK Nexus, things like that are out there that are looking at things a little bit differently and really starting to analyze what's going on with the position and turning it into not just go kick balls at the goalkeeper block ball, but really trying to dive into the nitty gritty of what's happening and how to properly train people. So those are resources I'd look into. In terms of the education processes I have, they're kind of outside the box. But for me in my life, I needed outside the box, and it made a lot of sense. And I've been able to apply that information into how I operate. So, if you're looking for sort of strength training, resistance training specialist program at Oklahoma, that's what I did. Some of the neuroscience stuff, I have a mentor named Jacques Henry Taylor. He's out of Maine. Muscle activation techniques with Greg Roscoff out of Colorado, muscle system specialist courses, Greg Mack out of Ohio. These are all courses I've taken over my post soccer playing career while I was coaching, that I've integrated all that information and how I operate. These are not soccer courses. I just have the ability, or let me scratch that. I've attempted as best I can to integrate this information into how I operate with my business and how I train my keepers, and with some success so far. It's not for everybody, but the people that come to me are bought in, and that's how we operate and move forward.
You hear that, Omar? You got a year's worth of education down the pipeline for you right there.
10 years.
Or I just buy Ben's. Or I buy
10
Ben's
years.
program. Buy Ben's program when it comes out. I think I'll make up some time.
Oh my gosh. Well, guys, honestly, Ben, I mean, we didn't even pull up any clips or anything like that, because honestly, this conversation was so fascinating. Yeah. Oh my, I mean, this I know we've literally scratched the surface, but I love unorthodox. I love thinking outside the box. I love, when people have a different point of view about the way things are being done, and honestly, Andy G-Bomb, Andy Greenbaum, he was saying you are like Yoda, and he was right. He was right, man. This is awesome stuff. If people want to know more about your GK Complete program, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
I have 2 Instagrams. I'm very social media unsavvy. I'm working on that part of my life, within reason, I guess. But at Dragavon Performance is one Instagram handle, and then at GK Complete. That doesn't have a lot of information in it yet. I'm still developing all that stuff. But at Dragavon Performance is where you're going to see the most content out there on my end, and you're going to see a bunch of different stuff, because I work with all sorts of different people. But yeah, those are the areas. I'm developing the website, getting all that stuff sorted out.
I'm not gonna lie. Like, once men's league starts back up again, I'm gonna get GK complete. I need that right now because I can't imagine what a disaster I'm gonna be when I get back out in the goal. Guys, obviously you can reach out to Saskia Weber to give her some advice on new microphones to purchase if you'd like. No, at Saskia_Weber. That's
You're
my
the one
bad.
that gave it to me.
I know. That's why it's my fault. It's my fault. I was just about to throw myself under the bus.
Is this the one you recommended to me?
Yes, it is actually. It actually is. Now, to be fair, Omar recommended that one too. So
look, I'm sure it's a glitch. I'll get it figured out. You know how technical savvy I am. So,
guys,
because my disc light just went out too. So I don't know if you know that. It just went. I'm like, this is a nightmare day for me. Okay.
Guys, if you want to learn more about Omar Zeenni's back issues, you can go out at ProGK Academy _ on Instagram. I'm sure he'll share all his information. He might even share some of his passport issues that he's had in the past week and give you a how-to tutorial on what to do or what not to do when it comes to your passport, which is one of them is make sure you look at the date and make sure that it's
Mike, real quick before we finish. Shout out to David Ochoa, JT Marcinkowski, two wins in the Olympic qualifiers. Let's hope they get a third against Mexico. I mean, geez, I hope we make the Olympics, for God's sake. I'm so excited.
Yeah, you think?
I hope so. Saskia, I hope so.
We're
not as good. We're not as good as the women's team, Saskia. All right. I mean, we're trying. We're trying.
We root for you. It's just good for soccer across the board in America. Come on, guys.
Please,
it's so darn hard because it's a U23s tournament. They don't release all the players.
Stop with the excuses. Stop. Zip it. Just enough. Let's just root for them to get it done.
There's some good players on that roster.
Yeah, exactly.
So many good players. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Mike.
But hey, actually, Bob, while we wrap up right here, just Ben, I'd love your feedback right here. Here's two completely different goalkeepers on how they move. David Ochoa and JT Marcinkowski, two very high-level goalkeepers who get the job done very different ways.
Yep. It's just maximizing the individual athlete. That's what you're looking at because they're built differently. They've got different movement patterns, so that's why you can't have a one-size-fits-all. I mean, they're different. They're different people.
Yep.
I'm just glad I know I'm doing things the right way. Thanks.
Guys,
I think I am. We're doing kind of all right now.
Sas, give me a field pass. I'll go stand behind the goal. I'll give you my honest thoughts. All right.
I know you will.
I've worked with a couple of your players. You're doing fine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Yeah, he's not talking to you, Omar.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking to both of you.
There it is.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we got it. I mean, honestly, Ben, like I said, we barely scratched the surface. There's going to be so many questions that come out of this podcast. I know, and I think, again, we're going to have to keep you on, keep you on standby because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to be reaching out.
I'd love to do a follow up. I could bring session content and things like that. And
that'd be awesome.
We can dive into it. Yeah, for sure.
That would be amazing. I mean, I know you had some stuff. I didn't want to stop the conversation. Honestly, we were having tech issues. I didn't want to take a chance that I would share screen. And the next thing I know, we lost the signal. And then it was then it was just me talking to myself for 2 minutes.
Which you do often.
I told you I go on rants, so these guys shut me up sometimes.
No, it was all good.
Guys,
Omar didn't go on a rant today, so that cut down our podcast by a half an hour, so we're fine.
No, but we made up that time with the technical difficulties from
All
South,
right,
so we're evened out. We're evened out.
Guys. Guest suggestion, topic suggestion at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms. Shout out to everybody who's been recommending we need to do a follow-up on sports performance. Couldn't think of a better person, honestly, than Ben. The funniest thing is, like, when Ben reached out, I was like, oh yeah, man, this would be cool. And then I looked up who Ben was, and I was like, oh my God, Jesus, yes, definitely, please come on the show. Humble us with your presence, sir. But again, guys, that's all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out. Later, guys.